Hello and welcome to Faithfully Stampin' with Jennifer Helm. I am Jennifer Helm, the Faithful Stamper and independent demonstrator with Stampin' Up. Today I have for you a quick and easy card technique. This card I am calling the DSP Triangle Cut and Flip card. It is a great way to use small pieces of designer series paper that you might have laying around, not tiny little scraps, but small panels. And it's great for any occasion and very quick and simple to put together, but not a boring card design. So I'm going to show you how to make it. The first thing you're going to need is a card base. I'm using Evening Evergreen. This is 8.5 by 5.5, squared down the middle. You can really use whatever style of card base you like though. Next, I'm going to need a panel of cardstock that is 5.25 by 4. This is Pear Pizzazz, and after a few minutes, this is going to get added to the front of my card. But first, I'm going to create the beautiful DSP panel to go on top of this. So, what I need is a piece of designer series paper that is 5 inches tall by 3 3/4 inches wide. Now, I could just glue it to the front of the card here and add some embellishment, and it would make a lovely card, but I want to change it up just a little bit. So I picked a panel of DSP that is two-sided and the sides go together. So I'm going to talk a little bit later about options for if you don't have double-sided paper, but just keep in mind when you're working with your paper that you're going to see both sides of it. This is not a complicated card design. You do need a paper trimmer, or you could use a ruler and scissors if you like. So this is our panel, again, 5 by 3 3/4. All we're gonna do is cut it on the diagonal in both directions. Now this first cut is pretty simple. So we're just going to line the ends up on my cutting track. Now a little tip that I like to do, with DSP I don't normally do it, but with cardstock I do, but it works with DSP too. So you know, sometimes when you're putting your cutting blade down, it grabs these corners and just crumples them in. You want your triangles to have beautiful corners. So you can actually slide your cutting blade down into the middle of the paper, hold your paper still, and just work up and down. So it really works well with cardstock if you're cutting it on the diagonal, because those cardstock corners really want to crumple in on you. So now this is the trickiest thing you're going to do with this entire card, is spin this panel around so you can cut on the other diagonal, but keep it together. Now, chances are it's going to move around. It usually does, and that's okay. What I do is I usually line up the top corner on my cutting track, and then I take a peek at my corners. I kind of butt the bottom piece up against the top, make sure my corners match, hold it in place, and again, start in the middle and cut. That's all you're going to do. So your paper trimmer can be moved. Like I said, you can always do that with scissors and a ruler and a pencil, and then just erase your pencil lines when you're done cutting. And then we've created this nice little panel, these 4 triangles. So all I'm going to do is pick 2 and flip them. Doesn't matter whether you pick top and bottom or side to side, just pick 2 opposing triangles and flip them over. And so this is the layout that we're going to have. Now I'm going to tell you a tip for placing these. My first card I tried laying them all out like this and then gluing them, but I found what I think to be an easier way to do it. So I'm going to slide these over to the side, and I'm going to bring over my silicone silicone mat. I'm going to switch up. I was using adhesive before to put these together, but I think I'm going to flip to glue because it's a little bit easier to get the glue in the corners. But I'm going to start with the 2 long skinny triangles to put on this card. And I'll tell you why in a minute. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip it over because I want this side up on the top. I'm gonna grab my glue. A little goes a long way with our Tombow glue, but I find that the glue, it gets you a little closer to the corners, and you do want your corners to stick. I'm gonna go ahead and put glue on this other panel while I'm here. Remember, not a lot. You don't want your glue oozing out. All right, so gonna slide one of these out of the way. But I found the way that worked easiest for me was I flipped my 5 1/4 by 4 panel long ways, and then I hold it on the point here at the bottom, and I very carefully put it along the edge. I try to give it the same border, nice even, and you don't want a big border because then your pieces are going to overlap in the middle and look a little funny. So give it a rather narrow border. The glue gives you a little more maneuverability before it sticks. With our Stampin' Seal Plus is great, and that's my favorite adhesive to use, but when it grabs your paper, it grabs your paper, and you're very seldom can you pull it back off without ripping it. All right, so I did this panel first. Then I'm going to repeat this with the opposite triangle. So I'm going to try to line it up, give it the same border along the edge and see where my edges are, and I'm going to slide it down a little bit. That glue enables me to do that. If I can match the points, that works too. One thing to remember though, if you're a perfectionist, this might not be the card for you, but you are going to cover up the middle. So if the intersection here in the middle looks a little wonky, you're going to hide it so nobody's going to know it's there but you. All right, so now I'm going to flip the panel the other way, and I want these triangles to go here. So I'm going to make sure I'm putting the glue on the right side. Again, going easy with the glue. And if you don't have glue, if all you've got is your tape runner, no problem. Silicone mat will definitely help you save your work surface. And just try to get as close to those corners as you can. All right. So now we're going to put together the rest of our little puzzle here. And so for these, I try my best to stick my finger in the glue on the other piece. Again, same border at the top and border equally between these two pieces. Now, sometimes this is a tight fit, but it can be done. Just have a little patience and it should work. And then I'm just going to flip this around. Hopefully I didn't take too much of the glue off here with my hand when I stuck it in there. And I'm going to repeat that. All right, and that's pretty good, I have to say. A little pat on the back for me. I think that might be the best panel I've actually put together on a card with this design on it. All right, I'm going to let this glue sit for just a minute. So I'm going to go ahead and jump to my stamping. For the front, I'm going to use a sympathy sentiment that is from the Inspired Thoughts stamping set. It has a lot of different occasions, but this sympathy sentiment is very nice, and it also has an inside message with it. So the With Heartfelt Sympathy I could pair with this Sheltering You with Love at a Time When Words Fall Short. However, for this card, I have opted to go with a different message. This is the Through It Together stamp set, and it has this one, Praying for Blankets of Healing Around You and Yours. So I decided to go with that. Sadly, I find the need for some masculine sympathy cards in my stash, so that was kind of necessity driven for this card design. But I'm going to take the sentiment stamp, red rubber cling here so I don't need any cushion underneath. I'm gonna stamp, and then I have a punch. You can use die cuts if that's all you have, or if you have a shape that you like better. I just grabbed a punch that I liked, and so there's the front piece for my card. And then while I have my ink and stamps out, I'm going to go ahead and put the inside sentiment on. Again, it's red rubber cling, and I'm using my shaded spruce ink for the front and inside messages, like that. And then I really like to have some kind of accent inside the card as well as my message. Sometimes it's a strip of matching designer series paper. Sometimes it's a little accent stamp. For this one, I grabbed an evergreen stamp that matches this design more or less from the designer series paper. It's actually part of the Christmas season stamp set. This is a beautiful set, and it does actually coordinate with this pack of designer series paper. It's called Painted Christmas. But this isn't an overly Christmas card. This panel of paper is actually the one that was the least Christmassy in the whole pack of paper. Can be Christmassy, but also doesn't have to be. So I'm gonna grab Pear Pizzazz, and I'm just gonna add a couple of these evergreen branches for a little accent. And then while I'm here, can't forget my envelope. So I'm going to add a couple more of these here on the bottom of my envelope, and then everything is nicely coordinated together. All right, ink pad closed and set to the side. Oh, and the reason I pulled out my Stampin' Pierce mat was that this evergreen stamp was the photopolymer and it didn't have that built-in cushion, so I just needed a little something to make sure I got a nice impression. Sometimes when you work with photopolymer on a hard surface, you don't quite get that little bit of give you need with the stamp, and that way you kind of ensure that you have a perfect image. All right, now I'm gonna grab my favorite adhesive, my Stampin' Seal Plus. I'm gonna put my inside in, just like this, little border around. And then we're gonna finish the front of the card. My glue should be sufficiently dry now. And I could really put the whole card together with adhesive. I just like my tried and true Stampin' Seal Plus. Use it as often as I can. So give this a little border on the front of your card. And I could, if I wanted, just put this right in the center and the card would be good to go. But I wanted to give it just a little bit of an accent. So I have some garden green ribbon. I'm kind of pulling in most of the green shades we have with this card, and that's okay. So I'm going to trim a panel just a little bit narrower. Then I'm going to trim the ribbon just a bit narrower than the panel. Helps if I get my words straight. I'm going to add a little bit of adhesive right here on the center, because it's going to be hidden behind my sentiment panel. Give that ribbon a press so it doesn't run away on me. Now for the sentiment on my punch, because this ribbon is on the middle, I don't want to put dimensionals right down the middle because they would probably not stick well to the ribbon and this panel would fall off the front of the card. So I'm putting mini dimensionals on the outside corners, or pretty close to. And then this way, it kind of creates a channel for that ribbon to be between, and I don't have to worry about this punch falling off the front of the card. And just like that, I have a quick and simple card ready to go. So this is a very quick and easy technique. Great way to use those small chunks of designer series paper that you still have laying around. And I'm going to show you a couple other options you have with this same design for the card. Now, if you want to take it one step further, you can add an additional layer. So, for example, these two cards are virtually the same. However, I added one additional layer. So I started with my card base. I've got that 5 1/4 by 4 panel. Then, instead of my DSP, I cut Evening Evergreen 5 by 3 3/4, and then I cut my DSP a 1/4 inch smaller, so 4 3/4 by 3 1/2. Everything else is the same. You're still going to cut diagonally. You're just taking it down another 1/4 inch, and it gives your card just one more visual layer. So it's up to you how much cardstock you want to put on the front, and how you want your card to look. I really like both. This one I like a little bit better, not necessarily because of the additional layer, but I like the dark cardstock peeking through a little bit more than the lighter. So it's really a personal preference thing. Totally up to you. You can also change the orientation on your card and do them horizontally. Now for these next couple of cards, I've got two versions here, and I have two more I'll show you in just a second. My DSP was not double-sided. It did not work well together. So I just picked two pieces of coordinating paper and I cut everything the same. The big difference is instead of one card, you'll be able to make two cards because you're mixing and matching. You see how I took these here and I'm using the other kind of reverse triangles on this card. So just keep that in mind, but it's a great way to make the cards quickly, and really you can mass produce them fairly quickly. So here we go. Here's another one. And for these, rather than a label with a sentiment, I used one of our new packs. It's actually these leaf cutouts. I think there's 20 of them in the pack. And then it also comes with these beautiful amber gems. They're kind of like rhinestones. So, and they're just lovely. It goes very well for the autumn. Great match for these. But you can see lots of different variety here with the cards and the designer series paper. Just one word of caution: if you're using 2 separate pieces of designer series paper as opposed to the one where we're gonna flip, sometimes it's a little trickier mixing and matching, only because even though we're still cutting corner to corner, each cut might be slightly off, so some of them are a little bit harder to fit together, but it should work. But just keep that in mind, a little bit trickier as opposed to this first style, because since it's all coming from one piece of paper, that your cuts are going to line up nicely. All right, I have a couple more to show you. I really like giving you options, so you can also use one piece of designer series paper and one panel of embossed cardstock. This is again why I offered that tip with cutting. When you're making that diagonal, the embossed cardstock, it definitely wants to crumple those corners. So start in the middle and do your diagonal end to end. But I really like how this looks. Again, I like it with the darker peeking through behind, but both perfectly lovely. And so this way, you can see if it was turned this way, here's the 2 sets of opposing triangles. And I just flipped the orientation on the second set. Sometimes your designer series paper looks a little bit better in one direction or the other. That's the only way that I determined which direction I wanted to go with these cards. But you can also intersperse that embossed cardstock if you like. And so again, with this one, I was having so much fun, I had to make a couple more too. All right, and then one more to show you, and I think this one is my favorite. It's very subtle, but very simple, and I think perfectly lovely. So this is a Christmas card. Again, just using one piece of designer series paper. I was able to flip. So one layer, the designer series paper. My die cuts here are from our painted labels die set, which is a very handy one to have. And just a little sequins for bling and a perfectly lovely Christmas card. All right, so that is our DSP triangle cut and flip card. I hope you enjoyed the technique. Very quick, very simple, and just something handy to have in your repertoire. So if you haven't already, I'd love for you to subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can click the notification bell and then be notified each time I post a video here on the page. You can also, if you're a fan of Facebook, check me out there as The Faithful Stamper. I do Facebook Lives twice a week. I post specials and other opportunities that Stampin' Up! Has available for you if you're interested, and you're welcome to check out my website anytime if you like. Take care, everybody. Happy crafting.